ballot in November. They have not seen an increase since 1996. And remember a couple of years ago in 16, the county commission at that time, I was not on the county commission, they said, while this is a 5-year levy cycle, typically we are going to look at children's services in 2 years because we are not at this time ready to do an increase, but we probably are going to head in that direction. And so here we are 2 years later, different county commission. Todd and I voted in favor of supporting the increase for children's services. Chris Momzell voted no. And so that's where we are. But before Moira talks to you a little bit about the increasing need for child protective services in the community and some of the stressors on the system by way of caseworkers and the trauma of the children coming into the system, I do want to put another layer on that and say that when Todd and I were contemplating our support for the levy, we did say that we would like to expand some of the services and really not change the approach of children's services, but add to it and say we want to put some focus on kinship care, where kin are hopefully getting the placement of the children to keep them out of the foster care system. So instead of a child that needs to go into some kind of placement, you contact kin aggressively first to try to keep them out of the system to begin with. It's better for the kids. It's in a much more efficient way to deal with kids that would otherwise be entering the system. We have talked a lot about parent navigation. So if you have a child in the foster care system, trying to help those parents navigate the system, it can be very intimidating. But there are things those parents need to do in order to get those kids back into a safe space. And so we are trying to be helpful with that. And then, I'll let Moira talk about some of the other proactive things that she's doing to support the caseworkers to make sure that they don't have the stressors that, don't well serve the kids or the community as a whole. So with that, I'd like to introduce Moira Weir. She's the director of JFS. How long have you been there, Moira?
Thank you for having us here in 2016. So as Commissioner Driehaus said, we're back again, and just to give you a sense of where we are, when I actually spoke to you in 2016, at that time we were touching 1 in 12 children in this community, and I'm here to tell you today it's 1 in 9. So we are really having a huge reach in terms of the children that we're working with. And the tragedy is that we see so much trauma with our families, and particularly the children have been witnessing perhaps untreated mental health, substance abuse. There's an increase in violence in the home. So we're really working with families and engaging them to help them overcome that. And in fact, when we look at our caseload size right now in terms of all the families that we're serving, we see those 3 things happening: domestic violence, substance abuse, and mental health all at the same time. In 80% of cases, all 3 of those things. So if you can just imagine for a child and a family what's that like, and how we're trying to really engage families to help them. And the one good thing is that despite the large numbers, we actually serve the vast majority of the children within the community. So of the 29,000 children we're touching, there are approximately 3,000 that we actually have custody of, but about 42% of those children are actually with kinship care. So we're really pushing to keep children within the kinship, within families, and wrapping services around families. But that just tells you that the vast majority of the kids that we're serving, we're really trying to reach them in the community and wrap services around them so that they can stay within the community. So for example, we've been pushing to do more in-home services, meeting families where they are, helping engage families in their homes, so we're not asking parents and children to have to go to multiple different places and separating the child to have the child treated here and the parent over here, but really treating them holistically together, knowing that long-term that's better for families. And certainly whenever we have to look at taking a child outside the home, which we really don't want to do because we know kids do best with their family, we work hard to make sure we can find a kinship caregiver. And it could actually be a really good friend of the family, but somebody who has a connection to that child, so the child could then, if they have to leave the home, which is the absolute last scenario that we try to use, we can wrap services around those kinship families or caregivers so those children can stay still within the community and feel that they get the supports. So the levy is critical for us in terms of making sure we can balance the increase of cases, in terms of making sure our staff have reasonable caseload sizes so they can really work with families and engage them where they are and spend time. But really more importantly, it's for the services so we can have the services for the families. And I was thinking about when I was a worker, I might have seen 1 or 2 of those things at a time in their household. Maybe it's substance abuse, maybe it's mental health. Well, now when you're looking at all 3, you really want to make sure that you're getting the right services to families in their home at the right level. And we also know with lots of trauma, and I can't tell you how much trauma our families are experiencing. It takes more work to kind of engage the family and then work with the trauma. And the good news is, if you do the right things, families overcome them. And we have a lot of families that have been very successful, and they're raising their children without our intervention, which is our goal, is to not to be intrusive, but to get out of their lives so that they can parent successfully. So I'm here to answer any questions. Did I forget anything, Commissioner?
I don't think so.
You know, when you meet people, they say, yeah, children's services are important, but they say, why do they need new money? Isn't it true that you've lost state money? And so there's sort of a real critical crunch here in terms of funds.
So the state is a terrible partner in many, many ways, as you know. Local government funds, transportation funds. Well, Children's Services is no exception to that. And so I don't want to speak in hyperbole, but I think it's true to say that we in the nation have the lowest state contribution to JFS and Child Protective Services. And if we doubled our contribution in Ohio, we would still be last in the nation. That's how low the funding is from the state. So yes, I mean, just like everything else, when you have decreasing revenue coming in from our state partners, you have to make up for that revenue somewhere else, and it's at the local level. And you see that playing out in many different ways, but in Child Protective Services, it's extremely important to understand this because the caseloads have expanded and increased because of the needs that Moira just explained. Think about the opioid epidemic playing into this as well. And so that there's a high turnover with the caseworkers. That is not a good scenario, and it's very expensive. And so we are trying to shore that up and do some proactive things that Moira just talked about to keep kids safely in the home if we can. But if they have to go into the system, we need to have those caseworkers in the front line to respond to that and make sure those kids are safe.
How much will it increase the?
It's 1.97, so it's for $100,000, it's $69 for the year.
It's an increase, or it's total?
It's an increase.
Any notion how it's polling? I have not heard anything about that.
So I've heard around 70 to 74%, but that was a while ago, so you have to always be
It's a volatile year. I mean, who's predicting anything this year? I'm not.
Who's putting up the signs? That's the vote no on one and not.
Yeah. Is there even a disclaimer on these signs? I don't think there's a disclaimer on those signs, so we really don't know who's putting up those signs, which, by the way, is not allowed. Yeah, so is there organized opposition? Someone's doing something. But generally, children's services levies, remember, they've been flat for many, many years, and they're very, very popular and sail through. This is an increase, the first increase since '96. But I personally